welcome to the International Pandemic Pedagogy Lessons Learned Moving Forward Conference, Day 2. Yesterday we had our first day, and it was a short day, but it was a very informative day. And Dr. Taylor has something to tell you with, to share with.
Well, yesterday we did a word cloud, and we came together and thought about what it was that the pandemic brought to mind, what our experiences encouraged us to think about. And the words that you see are all the things that came through. People talked about being determined to do something right for children, to innovate, to bring strength to what we did.
But the main words that combined together and everybody was repeating were resilience and virtual, because we all overnight, all schools and education became virtual. But I would like you to inform us about how many countries joined the conference.
Okay, well, let me start with the number of people who've registered for the conference are 259. Not everybody is here at this moment, but the list of registrants, it goes like this. Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, and by the way, when you hear your name or your country stated, wave or raise your hand or put up a happy face or something that will indicate that that's your connection. So I'll start again. Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Canada, China, Costa Rica, Greece. I'm looking for hands going up. Great Britain, Germany, India, Israel, Italy, Jordan. There we go. Look at all those hands. Lithuania, Myanmar, the Palestinian territories, Russia, Poland, the Ukraine. More hands. South Africa, Sweden, Thailand, and the USA. We should have many hands up now. So this truly is an international conference, and people who are not here with us this morning will be joining us later this afternoon. So just going back to what Dr. Smirnova was saying, our conference really is about resilience and how we all got to this position today. We'd like to invite you to join another activity right now. And Dr. Smirnova, you will.
Yes. So for today, we kind of was thinking today would be lessons learned, and what we prepared for you is the Jamboard activity. So my colleagues, my co-organizers would put the link in the chat. So when you go to Jamboard, we want you to write main lessons you learned during pandemic. So please, there are several boards. If there are too many people are on the board, there are several pages. So if you look, so there are several pages and there are different colors. So what you do, you click on text or note. And when you sticky note, you can type your text, and it would be nice if you write at least initials and the country you're from. So share what lessons, main lessons you learned during pandemic. Please share. You click on the right here. This is the link. This is the sticky note. Sticky note, or you can use the text. Lessons learned. Just at least few words. Okay, somebody learned that virtual learning can be helpful. Very good. Being flexible to survive. Very good. Patient. Yes. Oh, somebody is playing with the tools. Please. Like children. I didn't expect this to play with the tools.
Maybe people are just learning.
Yeah, probably. But it's wonderful to see. Virtual learning can be an effective format. We have to stick together. That's fantastic. Health is wealth. Yes, very important. Yes. Being flexible to survive. Isolation, the pandemic has created more issues with mental health. Learn how to use Seesaw, Google Meet, Zoom.
And I love this one. Don't take anything for granted.
That's absolutely right.
Nothing in our lives we should take for granted. And it is a lesson learned.
Yeah. Oops. Oh, pandemic. Oh, how amazing technology is. Some people made discoveries about technology. All right.
To be patient with myself, so very important, and with our students, and that we all learn together.
So please leave your notes there. We will organize, we will take a snapshot of this, and we will share with you definitely. That's absolutely wonderful. And if we come back to the conference, if we go back to conference, oops. So these are the lessons learned. And today we will learn more about the lessons, and our presenters will share today. And so before we continue, I would like to remind everybody so do you see the presentation now? Back again?
Yes.
Okay. We would like to remind you that we have a website. This is our website. There is a link, and if my partners, my helpers put the links in the chat. So website, that's where you can learn and confirm the program, and there is a schedule to see our presenters there. There is our Facebook page where you can join and post your experience, share your experience on that site. And we also have Twitter. And it would be great to, again, this will help us to stay connected, and it will help you to be informed about the conference. Please use hashtag PPC21, Pandemic Pedagogy Conference 21, and also the handle for this conference is at PPC 20 Conference 21. So you can share with each other, and we wanted you to also provide your handles in the chat so that it would connect all of us together. So today, these are the presenters for today. We first we welcome Dr. Nilay Yajnik, and around one sessions you see Rebecca, Liana, and Joy, and so this would be our first round. The second round is Tamara, Anna, and Jody, and the fourth round, after the keynote speaker of Dr. Maura Striano from Italy, we will have round 3 and round 4, as you see. And so the schedule, again, the link will be provided right now in the chat, and you can see the content of the workshop. But we will create, after the keynote, we will create the breakout rooms, and you will be able to choose rooms on your own. So now we are to listen to our first presenter, Nilay Yajnik, and Lindsay or Courtney please introduce our first speaker.
Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us today. As Dr. Smirnova said, my name is Courtney Ostrander, and I am the co-membership chair and graduate advisor of the Sigma Tau chapter of KDP. I'd like to welcome you all to this important session. But before we begin, I do have a few reminders to share. First, we do ask that you keep your microphone muted until the Q&A portion of our session. And a sign-in sheet will be sent out in the chat prior to the Q&A session, so please be sure to sign in. And with that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Nilay Yajnik. He comes to us from India, and we are excited to have him with us here today. We look forward to his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could somebody enable my sharing? I'm unable to share my screen. I have a presentation.
All right.
Okay, you should be able to now.
I think you have to stop sharing, then I can share mine.
Of course.
Yeah, just a moment. Oops. Disable screen sharing. Disable screen sharing. I cannot share.
Oh, what happened? Do it again.
I'll try again.
Okay.
Host disable participant screen sharing.
Or maybe there are too many co-hosts. Check now. Nilay, you have the sharing.
Let me try. Yeah. One moment. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Ludmila, for inviting me today to speak in this wonderful and extremely relevant conference on pandemic pedagogy and what we have learned from the pandemic pedagogy. I'm also delighted to see Dr. Nelly, a colleague whom I've worked with for many years, the Moodle for Teachers, as well as a book chapter which we all wrote together in the pre-pandemic era, but virtually. So what I'm going to explain today, what I'm going to talk about today is the experience of my university, Navaratna University, which is in Vadodara, which is the western part of India, about a 5-hour drive north of Mumbai. And the kind of challenges that we faced, the kind of excitement that we had, and the kind of preparation that we did to ensure a completely smooth transition, by and large, for education for our student community as well as for our teacher community. So I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about my own prior experience, because my prior experience of computer-based education and online education helped me tremendously in putting my thoughts together to make this university go completely online in the pandemic. And my tryst with computer-based education started way back in 92, 93, when even the internet was not so popular commercially. And I was working with a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, which is now Hewlett-Packard, and a part of Hewlett-Packard. And we used to have training conducted globally by people from digital all over the world across a private network called DECnet. And this was actually education happening for us employees as well as for our customers. We also developed computer-based training packages for our customers. And all this certainly went a long way and brought that level of excitement and that level of passion into me to think of how we can use online education more effectively. Around 2003, I'd like to explain to you about an alma mater of mine, my first alma mater, which is the Birla Institute of Technology and Science in Pilani, which is North India, and BITS Pilani. This particular institute, when I studied there way back in 1978 to 83, it was and still is a fairly remote town in India. It's quite far away. I mean, it's about a 5-hour drive from New Delhi or Jaipur. And it's quite remotely connected. In fact, the India of those days, 1978, our telecom infrastructure was not very modern as it is today. And in fact, when I had to call, I was a young 17, 18-year-old boy, and I had to call, we had to stay there in the hostel. It was compulsory. And every time I had to call my mom and dad, I had to go to the campus post office to what was known as book a telephone call. I had to wait 1 hour, and then I would get a call for some 3-4 minutes. That was the way it worked. So that was the kind of communication technology which was existing in our country 1978 onwards. And because the world itself was not, was still evolving in computers and communication technology. Now let's fast forward to 2003, around 2002, 2003. BITS Pilani approached their ex-students, the alumni, saying, can you help our university out? And can you guys teach our students, give some kind of a guest lecture for our students over a network online? And that was actually the beginning of our exposure to a network. One of our alumni used to work in Cisco, and he helped lay an entire network across the university. And it was such a fascinating experience that from my home, I could deliver a lecture live to a place, a very remote area in India where, just a few years earlier, I had to wait for 1 hour to speak for 3 minutes to my parents. So it was a significant change that happened then. The next significant change happened around 2005 when this entire network of BITS Pilani was expanded to the 4 campuses of BITS Pilani, which was in Goa, which was in Hyderabad, and of course in Pilani. And they opened a new campus in Dubai also. So it was, an experience in which I saw the transition from, a place where communication was so poor to a place where sitting at home, I could deliver a lecture live to a class spread over thousands of miles away, 4 cities. So this was the project called the BITS Embryo Project, entirely driven by us alumni. Around 2004, my second alma mater, which is a Mumbai-based management institute called the Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies, they started to experiment with VSAT-based training and learning for corporate professionals. And that was my exposure to distance learning through technology for corporate, for executive education. So this is the way in which my interest in technology-based education started. Fast forward now to 2011, there's a Professor Vasil Taras from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. He approached me because he was teaching a course on international business. And he wanted to know if professors from all over the world could join in a global project for his students and merge my students and students from other countries also together. And so that, in international business, he wanted his students to get an exposure to real international business, international student communities. And I signed up for this project. It was called the X Culture Project. Those of you who are interested, you can check it out, x-culture.org. And it was a very unique project way back in 2012 or so, where we had almost 50 countries of the world participating, students and professors from several universities of the world participating and working on some project online, using tools which were available then. So Facebook or, Skype or such kind of tools which were available then. And the project became just an extension of the project which they were doing in each university's curriculum. So that was the next project which we tried. And we had around 2,000 students around the world participating in this. The kind of projects which Professor Vasil Taras, he gave us freedom to choose what we like. And it was fascinating to see how students in group of 6 would interact, the condition was not a single student in a project team of 6 people should be from the same country. So, that was the condition. And everyone was working on a project and each one got an exposure to the culture of that different country. For example, the next big idea for McDonald's. So the Ghana student would give his perspective, the student in India would give his perspective, and all of them would work on building a project, which was then presented, virtually as well. This was another experience which I had in, technology-based global education. Then in October 2019, my alma mater, the second alma mater, the Management Institute in Mumbai, Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies, they invited me to teach a course. And this was for executive students, and this was for students spread all over the world. And they asked me, the platform that we will use is this platform called Zoom. Now, I had not heard of Zoom in 2019, mid-19. But they were using it and they found it quite interesting and useful. I love seeing new things. So I just jumped into this Zoom bandwagon and I tried it out. They trained me and then I tried it out. And I got so excited at the ease of use of Zoom that I invited my own colleagues in my current university, Navratna University. And I just told them, sit and watch a class in progress. And they sat. I called people from the administration, I called faculty colleagues, I called so many people within my university to get a look and feel. And for the first time, they too saw in reality, saw in action how the classroom, which is physically here in our campus, got extended globally. So that was a very unique thing. And you could see the fascination on the faces of our faculty colleagues, on the administration and others as well. So this was the my exposure to Zoom before the pandemic actually happened. Then what happened? Let's see what happened then. The pandemic started to hit the world around December. Actually, it started in January or so globally, but it was slowly spreading all over the world. And if some of you remember, I think there's a session in this conference on Shakespeare and how Shakespeare gets taught online post-pandemic. So, if some of you would remember what in Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar, there is a very catchy line by an old man who warns Julius Caesar, beware the Ides of March. And that's what happened in our own university as well, because the pandemic hit India in the first quarter of 2020. We were still not sure, but the way things were spreading, we had to be prepared. And since I had some exposure to technology-based education, I said, let's try it out. Let's try out something new and experiment. And therefore, we were closely watching what was happening. And in March, on March 11th, to be precise, we were so proactive. On March 11th, we formed a core committee of faculty and support, the IT support people of our university, and program chairs as well. And we formed this core committee just to explore and drive possible online teaching. In other words, just like in business, you have what is known as a business continuity plan. We thought, let's make an education continuity plan. In the worst possible situation, if there's a complete lockdown in our country, how do we ensure that education still happens? And that was the challenge that we faced. So the faculty, so on the 11th of March, we formed this core committee, and the core committee's main role was to experiment, was to try out different platforms and see comfort levels. How do you, and the challenge for our university was that it is multidisciplinary. So we have architecture, we have design, we have law, we have education, social work, management, engineering, and science also. So a lot of interdisciplinary work, a lot of multidisciplinary teaching. And we did not want this to be only with one school or one program. We wanted all our students across all the schools to go online and continue learning and continue teaching as well, our faculty colleagues. And that's how we formed this education continuity plan. So the education continuity plan, which we formed, I'd like to divide it into two phases. The first phase was from March to June 2020, about 3-month period in that quarter. So the faculty, once the core committee got some kind of an exposure, some kind of ideas to to online teaching, to different platforms, they in turn trained a few faculty in their respective schools. And then faculty were encouraged to experiment with different platforms. So some people tried Google, some people tried WebEx, some people tried Skype, some people tried Zoom, some people tried OneNote. So different kinds of experiments were going around in our university. On 23rd of March, the government of India declared a complete lockdown in our country. So nobody was allowed to go out of the home. So the university was completely closed. No students, no teachers, nobody was allowed. But we were determined to try out and see how we can continue this process. So the faculty, as I said, were given freedom to try things out in this period. In the week prior, just try it out. And when we launched on 23rd March, we said, go ahead and teach your course in whichever way. Doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Doesn't matter if you're not comfortable, but try it out at least. Let's see what happens. So that's what we did. And then what happened? People tried all kinds of platforms, which they were comfortable with. We did not impose any specific platform. We left it open to them to decide what their comfort level was. Our faculty, 3 members of our faculty also were doing a lot of experimentation in the core committee and watching and observing how these people are trying new things. Now let's come to the agony part of the whole thing, the frustrations, the challenges that we faced. There were many, of course, like everybody else, and in the initial few weeks, beginning 23rd March, number one, there was a resistance from people, teachers. They tried it out. They tried online teaching, but they would say it's impossible. We are used to chalk and talk. We are used to seeing the students physically. It's quite as you all know by now, it's quite a challenge, and it's very daunting to speak to a camera. And especially when for 30 years you've been teaching physical students, you can see their body language, you can see their facial expressions and decide in real time how you should go about delivering the course. Here it becomes extremely challenging, and so many people were uncomfortable with it. They didn't know. They said, the statement was, we don't know if our students are listening or not. We don't know if they are there or not. They may have just switched it on and run away. Another complaint which we had was that the internet was not working. I don't have a PC at home. I don't have a laptop at home. I have only one laptop, and there are 4 members of my family, and all of them need laptops because all their institutions or companies need that particular infrastructure. So, there was that kind of resistance, that frequent breakdowns of the net, or not having a device, 4 or 5 devices, which everybody needs. The students also had an issue. Many students, once the lockdown was declared, they went home, and their homes were in remote parts. Their homes did not have the kind of internet connectivity that would be there in a big city. And this was the issue. Sometimes the students use things to draw, because you see, just like what we had now, people, it's like playing around with a new toy. When you see a new technology, you play around with the toy, and that way you learn as well. And some students also were trying to understand knowingly, unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, but they were trying to experiment and see how to use this new technology. And the teacher sometimes felt interrupted, sometimes felt hurt, insulted as well. And that became another challenge, managing human relations as well. So, and sometimes they didn't know how to manage when multiple students start to speak at the same time. It became a little chaotic. So these were the kind of the challenges that we faced. And there was a certain amount of agony in this whole exercise. One moment. Yeah. The faculty had zero exposure to online teaching. And the problem was the faculty taught exactly like what they were teaching in an offline mode. Now, as you all know, you cannot teach an online class the way you teach offline. This was a big challenge also, because the faculty had to get used to this. And you have to make it a lot more engaging, a lot more interactive with different tools, and the information is all there for everybody. So how do you become a facilitator to facilitate this? And that was a big challenge that we had across all the 27 programs that we had. So this was the timetable was another. We tried our best to keep the timetable. So a 9 o'clock class on Mondays would be 9 o'clock on Mondays. It was very difficult to keep this timetable and the sanctity of the timetable. And the reason was, sometimes the internet doesn't work. Sometimes there's a power failure, either the student's place or our place. And we had to wait at times. Sometimes if the net is so slow, we have to extend the lecture a little bit. So those were some of the challenges that we had. Zoom security, there was a phase, I remember, when there was a lot of bad publicity about Zoom, about the fact that it's very insecure, and the authenticity of Zoom is not known, and all those kind of things happened in that period in the first quarter, which is up till June 2020 or so. We had not bought a license of Zoom then. It was the free open source license which we used, and that limitation is 40 minutes, because we were not sure as to which platform we wish to standardize on. In fact, we weren't sure, like so many people, we didn't know how long this pandemic would go. So many people whom I know, they thought this is just a 1 week phenomena, maybe 2 week phenomena. So we can always stop the class for a couple of weeks and then restart. But that didn't happen. And that was where the challenge was. So then we decided that we will buy a license of Zoom, which would have unlimited number of users, unlimited time, so that people don't complain about this. So, but this was the agony at this period, March to June. Now let's go on to the ecstatic part, the happy part, the fun part, which, you know, happened in the next phase, beginning June to December. Once we understood the pains that we went through from April to June, March to June, we actually started to play around with it. And it became fun, actually, the way we were using, and different faculty, because we have at our university, Navrachana University, we have highly qualified faculty. And each faculty was trying to experiment and learn in his own way and try things out in his own way. It was amazing to see the reach of our lecture going far and wide, and people started to enjoy teaching online. The borders were eliminated, and we had a huge advantage in that, I mean, we had speakers coming in from abroad virtually. So, you know, in normal times, it would have been extremely difficult to do that and extremely expensive as well. But this was very much feasible. And in fact, we did more than 120 of such seminars, lectures, guest sessions, workshops, more than 120 of them in that period beginning March 2020 till around July 2021. Microsoft Teams, which we had invested in, became evolved, and security features and authenticity also became more evolved. Earlier, you know, when the pandemic struck, our impression in using Teams, MS Teams, was it was more of a meeting tool, not so much of an education tool. But then once we had standardized, we found that Teams also had evolved, and the authenticity of students was very, it was good to spot the authenticity of students. So continuing on the ecstasy, what happened was we started to explore a lot of new tools. And the challenge, of course, which we had in theory courses, in theory programs like law or like management or maybe even social work, you know, it was relatively easy to go online. But the challenge in science and the challenge in engineering, because we have life sciences, we have chemistry, we have mechanical engineering, electrical, civil. So in these kind of, and of course, computer science. But in these kind of courses, lab work became a big challenge. So how do you, you know, make sure that while your theory is online, how do you make sure your students get some exposure to the lab and the practical, because a lab is a very integral part of the learning process. And that was a challenge that we had. So our people, you know, it's like we accepted the fact that the pandemic is here to stay for some time. And we have to start learning newer and newer tools. So we picked up and we started to explore open source, and we got responses also, many of them from universities in the US, students from the US who had built certain simulation packages as a part of their projects. And they reached out to us and said, here we have a simulation package for life sciences, or a simulation package for chemistry or engineering, and so on. We tried new ways of teaching as well, teaching and learning. For example, in architecture, our architecture school, they floated a global design challenge. The idea was let people design an open space post-pandemic. So, and we got perspectives from all over the world, right from the US to India to different parts of Europe and all over. So this was a new way which we got exposure to. So from a purely limited classroom physically of about 40 students, the world became the classroom. And architecture and design people, it was a fascinating experience. So in these areas, science, engineering, architecture, we saw a lot of new things happening. Of course, in the law, in the management, we got exposed to different ways of teaching through breakout rooms, as we have here today through Zoom. We got this exposure. All this happened in the period June to December 2020. Our library innovated through a knowledge management portal where the librarian helped lead the development of a KM knowledge management portal, where a lot of open source material was available in one repository, by which students and teachers could access that open source material easily from home. A lot of learning is what we got in this period. We experimented with new kinds of assessment methods, multi-choice questions, project-based vivas, and different things which people had never tried out before. But we tried that out here. By and large, we kept our examination schedule on target. We tried our level best to do that. And that was one agenda which all of us were keen on doing. And by and large, we did manage that. A very interesting new thing we developed was through our Center for Professional Education, which is, training people outside, not just undergraduate students or students, postgraduate students of the university, but the corporate professionals, the professionals who are working on a particular problem or a particular job somewhere. We wanted to reach out to them, and we could do that virtually. Several new programs could be addressed, including, across schools, like Lean Six Sigma was one such training which we did for corporate professionals. We did one for education for school teachers called Higher Order Thinking Skills and Critical Thinking. A large number of school teachers came and joined and did this course. Even engineering courses like molecular gas dynamics for professionals in the industry, that too was covered online through our Center for Professional Education. So from the time where we were doing programs physically, we saw completely new opportunities and completely new areas where we could reach out. We even had participation from people abroad in these professional education programs. And then we started to experiment with the learning management system, Moodle. And this is what we tried to, just again, experiment. So just try things out. But we were doing it in a very systematic way. And I'll just speak about that. So the ecstasy, which is the third phase, which the phase, of this year, January to July 21, this is again extremely interesting innovations which our university has done because of the pandemic. So we have a project.
Dr. Nilay, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll finish. This is my almost second last slide. So we have a project called Discovery. Khoj means discovery, which is an interdisciplinary project which is compulsory for all students of all of the university, where they're supposed to do a social innovation project. And this entire project went online. And it went online, and the kind of projects we did was digital literacy. There was a team that provided science training to 5th grade students in rural areas in their language. There was another team which focused on developing opportunities for livelihoods for rural women. All this done virtually. And for the first time, rural women who had, who were unable to speak in any language other than their language were able to come online face to face and it was fascinating to see them so excited. Our law program started a moot court online again, all over India. And we had participation even from the US. So a lot of new things is what we did, including a literature festival, an idea festival, as well as our commencement. We started several centers as well, like a heritage research, public health. We had an education innovation, a doctoral colloquium, all that online. These were new things which we learned in the maturity phase, in the phase 3, which we tried out. So that is the ecstasy. What is the way forward? My view is that as institutions are now slowly opening up, because the COVID danger is slowly reducing, the institutions are opening up. But the danger is we should not go back to the comfort zone. We should not give up the good things that we learned in the online space and the kind of innovation that we did. Because if we do that, there is a danger of history repeating itself. Just like Borders, the bookstore, was completely wiped out by Amazon, or new models which are evolving of business, in which Walmart, a brick and mortar company, has bought an e-commerce company in India called Flipkart to get into the e-space, or Amazon, an e-company, getting into the brick and mortar company. So you're seeing these kind of developments happening, where the physical people are getting virtual, the virtual people are getting physical. And that is what will also happen in the field of education, where you will need to leverage the power of both online and offline together. So flexibility will be the key in this new normal. The student needs to have that flexibility. The teacher needs to have that flexibility. But at the same time, there has to be a trade-off between flexibility on the one side and the lack of social interaction, which is so very necessary. So students do need to come to the campus. The teachers do need to come to the campus and interact. But at the same time, both of them should also have the freedom and the capability to interact independently, virtually as well. So blended learning will definitely be the new normal. And yeah, and this is my final slide. The way forward is that all stakeholders, teachers, students, parents, recruiters, administrators, as well as boards, we have to accept this reality and the changes that are happening. The advantages are huge in going in this manner, but also a little slippery. So we have to navigate this path rather than resist anything. So let's, of course, go back to the physical campus, but not forget the benefits, the learning that we did in the online space. And somehow we have to learn to adapt both. So we cannot go back to the typical pre-pandemic kind of learning. There's a fundamental disruption in learning and teaching that has happened. And so thank you so much. These are my views on the lessons that we learned at our Navratna University in Vadodara. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yajnik. It was very interesting and very solid reflection on the topic of our conference. And you really described your lessons learned, your thinking about what you were going through, and your plans for the future. Thank you. If you stop sharing, we continue our next part. Next part is, so please stop sharing.
I'm just trying that. Just
on the top, yeah.
While you stop sharing as we transition, I just wanted to add that so many of the things that you said related to our introductory discussions yesterday and the speakers from yesterday, the concepts of freedom to choose and collaboration and teaming, all of that were themes that came through loud and clear yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our first round of the conference would be our 3 sessions. The rooms are created. I just want to remind that room number 1 would be Rebecca Quackenbush with her presentation, her workshop, professional loop writing, community sourced and renewing. Liana Malinowski and Paul Garcia room number 2, professional, oops. No, that would be a different, how it's happened 2 times. Okay. Liana and Paul would be presenting their topic. And Joy Blake, room 3, will be presenting motivating the remote student.